Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends. I hope you are well today. I am really good. I'm feeling kind of excited. I'm about to take my son, who will be 14, my goodness, in a few weeks on a one-on-one trip, just me and him, out to New Mexico. New Mexico was a place I spent part of almost a year of my life when I was younger, and I just am so excited to show him it. My heart sings when I'm in that landscape, and I just can't wait to share that with him and that beautiful, beautiful land. So I'm really excited about that. I hope there's something you are looking forward to in your life, and if not, I hope today's episode can change that. Today we are going to talk about making a habit of love without conditions. This is really a key to making your marriage and your experience of it really incredible. And I'm going to share all sorts of things on this today, although I feel like I could talk about love for weeks. So this is just another little tip of the iceberg, but I think there's going to be a lot of golden nuggets in here for you today. So I want to start off just by talking about how easy it is to love our partner when they're doing things we love, right? When they're acting in ways that we admire, when they're, saying nice things and being sweet. And like for me, it's like when my husband's sending me sweet little emojis or checking in during the day or listening really well when I'm sharing something, just like with his open, loving presence, right? Like it's so easy to love him then. Yeah. And I'm sure you have things that makes your husband easy for you to love. But what if you could love him, feel that same full-heartedness, even when he's not doing things how you like? What if you could love what's hard to love at the moment? How would that change things in your marriage and in your life? Now, there's some confusion oftentimes about what it means to love, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more today. So that kind of misconception of what love is doesn't confuse you. So I'll get into that in a few minutes. But the thing is to understand is that love is always available. Now, we don't always know this, of course. We really do have this tendency to think it depends, that love, our ability to feel love, depends on outside circumstances, right? Again, depends on, how your husband is behaving, for example. But that actually is never, ever the case. Love is always available. It's always an option, right? Even when, no matter what. And we really can love what is hard to love at the moment, or what feels to you hard to love right now. You can learn to love that. Loving is a choice. It's actually a skill, and it's a habit that we can create inside of ourselves. Isn't that amazing? And I know this might seem a little radical to you because we've been taught that love is kind of like a blessing that just rains down upon us if we're lucky, or a gift that just kind of happens to land in us, right? Or doesn't, right? It either happens to us or it doesn't, as if we have no say over our love, our capacity to love. But not only is that just not true, but it's also just so much more empowering to think about love as a skill, or like loving as a skill you can develop, right? A habit that you can make a natural part of your life, that you can like make become who you are, this person with this giant capacity to love. Because then it's in your hands how much love you feel or how much little love you feel, how little love you feel. It's in your hands, and you don't have to wait for your partner to bring it to you. You don't have to wait for the conditions to be just so in order for you to feel love. And let's face it, not all of your partners, right? Not all of our partners are great at bringing love consistently, frequently, and in the way that makes it easy for you to love, right? They're not great at making you feel love all the time, right? So let's not make the love that you want to feel contingent on him. When we do that, we're forfeiting so much. We're forfeiting so much. And the truth is, in fact, it is not contingent on him. How much love you feel is not contingent on him. It's contingent on you, on your capacity to love, on your own inner wiring inside your mind, body, heart system, right? That's what gets in the way or paves the way to more love, right? The stories you tell yourself about your husband, about what his actions and ways mean, the perceptions you have of him, the beliefs you have about him, the filter through which you see him, that's what determines how much love or how little love you get to feel. In other words, you determine how much love you let yourself feel or how little love you let yourself feel, not him. And the amazing news is you don't have to put conditions on your love. Meaning you don't have to withhold love because you don't like something your partner is doing, right? Or isn't doing. Oftentimes it's that. He's not making time for me. He's working too much. He's not, following through with what I asked him to and he said he would do, right? We use so many things as excuses not to love, to not love, to withhold love. But really, that's just cutting us off from what we want to be feeling. It's withholding from ourselves. It's taking away access to the best thing in the world, which is the love in our hearts, the feeling of love. When we withhold love, this is really conditional love, right? It's like, I'll love you in this condition. I'll feel love for you under these conditions only and not under these conditions, right? And we think that when we're withholding love because of certain conditions, right? We think it's a punishment to them. Like somehow me not feeling love for him is punishing him. But really, it's punishing us. He's not the one not feeling the love. We are. Yeah? So my clients often come to me when they come to me at first. They're punishing themselves in this way because they don't like something their husband's doing, something in their husband's behavior. For example, I'm going to share a few examples. One of my clients really withheld love from herself, right? Meaning she didn't feel love for her husband. Therefore, she didn't get to feel love inside of herself when her husband smoked cigarettes. So not only did she have to deal with like that yucky cigarette smell, right? Not only was there that, which wasn't her fault at all, right? But she also had to deal with her own yucky feelings in addition. So now it's not just the cigarette smell. It's also all this yucky emotion that she has around her husband. And she has to deal with this cold front between her and her husband. Yeah. Another client withheld love because her husband worked a lot. So what would happen is he'd come home. When he did come home, she wouldn't be feeling love. Instead, she'd be feeling hardened and closed off, kind of resentful and angry, right? And then she'd interact with him from that place. And then she wouldn't actually get to feel the love they had for each other while he was actually at home and they were actually able to be spending time together, right? She could have improved it for herself so much, and she learned how to in our time together, that like by allowing herself to feel love for him while she had him there, right? Instead of punishing herself by withholding love because he wasn't around enough. Another client at first was withholding love from her husband, but again, really from herself, of course, when her husband was feeling overwhelmed or kind of down because he was stressed about work. I see this one a lot. And so now not only did he have an unhappy work life, but he also had a wife who was mad at him, right? And she had not only a grumpy husband, but a grumpy self. Yeah? So you can see that not loving, having conditions on your love, generally doesn't produce good results. It's not going to lead to more love, right? You've probably heard me say that a lot. Not loving doesn't lead to more love. Love itself is what breeds more love. So guiding ourselves to love, letting yourself love unconditionally without condition, is actually guiding your brain and nervous system into safety and regulation, right? Guiding your brain into safety, your nervous system and mind, body, heart system into regulation. In other words, it's an act of love for yourself when you allow yourself to love. The more you allow yourself to love, the better it is for you. Guiding ourselves into love is actually a deeply loving act of self-care. One of the very best kinds of self-care possible. When we are feeling love, when we are in a space of love, it puts us in a position to be more open, to be more present, to access our higher brain, to think clearer, right? To be in touch with our hearts, obviously, to be more creative, to respond in ways to our partner, to the world around us in ways that we feel great about, right? It allows us to be at our best and highest capacity as humans when we are loving, when we are feeling love. And of course, it simply feels amazing. It feels like the best. Loving is like the best, right? When you feel love, I know you love it. And it always leads to great results in your relationships, in your life. Even if you end up not staying with your partner, right? Or even if your partner isn't able to reflect that same kind of love back to you. And, if that's the case, maybe they were not open to loving well anyway. Maybe they weren't ready, not capable for one reason or another. And that's not about you. But loving always leads to great results. It leads to the best possible results. Think about it. If you say things out of anger, another human is way more likely to reflect that anger back to you, right? To have their nervous system triggered and to respond in kind with anger. It's a funny way to put it, in kind. It's not so kind, right? But to respond with anger. Especially if they themselves haven't developed a lot of emotional agency, right? Most people haven't, honestly. It's not a skill that's taught. So my son is a great example. Actually, both of my sons, my older sons. But my eldest really, really taught me about this. He's been such a great teacher in so many ways. He's always been very unreceptive or like hostile when he hears an edgy tone, right? Like when I approach him with an edgy tone, like when I'm annoyed, he responds terribly. I was able to learn this fairly quickly because it was so obvious, right? When I come to him, on the other hand, like when I speak to him about something that I didn't like seeing going on or something I want him to do, when I come and, vocalize that from a place of being grounded in love, right? Meaning when I'm feeling love for him and I speak from there, he's so much more responsive. I think my words come out differently when I'm feeling love than when I'm feeling annoyed, of course. But also there's just a completely different energy to me, and he can receive that, right? It's fascinating to watch because my husband is not so great at this with the boys. He has thoughts that make him really annoyed at the boys, particularly around chores, about them not being eager to do house chores. So when he addresses them about the house chores, it's usually out of frustration, agitation, right? And bossiness and annoyance are conveyed on his tone, in his words. And the boys inevitably rebel against him. They inevitably say something sort of snarky back or just like, no, I'm not doing that. Right? Whereas when I ask them to do a chore, I do it from a loving place. And they hear that and they respond beautifully. They're like, sure, Mom. But here's the thing. You might be like, well, yeah, that might just be you and they're a different relationship. There might be a little bit of that there. But truth is, if I ever do ask them from an annoyed place or talk to them about cleaning something up from that annoyed place, they rebel against that too. They get snarky back with me. This is an example of how love always leads to good results. Now, I want to share like the biochemistry of this, just a little bit about this, because I think it's so fascinating. Just to show you how love is always the best thing for you. It's like the best gift you can give yourself, and it produces such amazing results. So oxytocin is the hormone in our body, or maybe it's like a neuropeptide in our body that, well, it's the love hormone, right? There's a lot of it in your body when you're feeling love. A lot of it's in your body, you're feeling love and connection. They've done, studies that show like if they inject people with some oxytocin, it actually helps these people glide through, conflicts or stressful social situations really gracefully, with ease. When you have that kind of oxytocin in your body, it actually makes your body produce less cortisol, which is the stress hormone, right? And it makes us behave more like positively. And just like you show up in a more friendly way. And that's conveyed through mirror neurons, right? Other people's mirror neurons pick that up. And then, of course, they're going to be much more likely to mirror or reflect that back to you. And of course, all of this then naturally raises the oxytocin levels even more, which actually curbs stress-induced like heart rate and blood pressure rises is the word, right? And it actually decreases feelings of depression and increases your pain thresholds. When there's a lot of oxytocin in your system, this is actually one of the keys to bringing out the gift of your sensitivity, right? Because so much of what obscures your beautiful sensitive genius, right? The superpower of your sensitivity is the stress, right? The stress and all the hard stuff. And, the intense emotions and not knowing how to work with them well, and the overwhelm, right? All of this. But oxytocin and love, that sharpens your gift of connection, like our beautiful ability to sensitively connect with our honey and with other people in the world. That is sharpened because of feeling love. When we feel love, when we have oxytocin really circulating through our system. And it actually gives us capacity. I think this is so cool and fascinating to actually read other people better. And that doesn't just mean there are cues of like love and, just reading them and knowing them well and understanding them well, but it also heightens our capacity to discern whether they are a good or safe person for us to be around. In other words, your gut instincts about like knowing who to trust and who not to trust are way heightened. It actually helps you discern whether or not people are being sincere or have genuinely good intentions. In other words, it heightens your sensitivity and actual intuition. Whereas when we're feeling stressful emotions, when we're feeling lots of the opposite, like anger and resentment, that actually distorts our capacity to discern what's really going on in the other person. It makes us falsely distrustful and see things that aren't actually really there. Dangers and flaws and such things. So love and having this oxytocin moving through your system, it actually makes you less gullible. It makes you be able to read others' intentions more accurately. Ultimately makes you wiser, right? And not sort of like falling prey to the false intuition or that like overactive threat system that so many of us highly sensitive people have, right? So that's one of the ways love is so much a gift to you. It's so good for you. It serves you so much. And of course, like if you just think about this, I know you all know this, that love impacts the world so positively in so many ways. And love is available to you. Love without conditions is available to you. And it will bring you all of this and more when you can spend time there. So let's talk a little bit about what is love without conditions. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Really, loving without conditions means it would be so, like I would love my husband in any condition. There's nothing he can do to make me stop feeling love for him. And I think maybe when I say it like that, it can, for some of you, it might feel kind of hard to think about like, well, could I do that for my husband? I think it's useful to use the example of if you have children, to think of your children, right? I think most of us moms can relate to this for our own kids. Is like, there's nothing he could ever do that would keep me from feeling love for him, that would stop me from loving him, right? Like I think about like a toddler in a temper tantrum. Like, sure, it's not like you're going to like the temper tantrum or approve of him having his temper tantrum, right? But you still love the kid so much, even when he's having a temper tantrum, right? If someone stopped you in the middle, even if you were feeling stressed because he was having a temper tantrum and someone said to you, hey, do you love this child? You wouldn't say no, right? You'd know obviously how much you love him, even while he's flipping out on the floor, right? You don't put conditions on your love for him because he's having a tantrum, right? And you can have that same depth of love, that same capacity to feel love without conditions for your husband if you want. But this does not mean that you do things you don't want to, or like cheer him on when he's on the floor, when your kid's on the floor. I mean, hopefully your husband isn't having tantrums on the floor, but I don't know. Stranger things have happened. So I want to be really clear with you that loving isn't permissiveness. It isn't condoning bad behavior. Those are totally different things, When you love without conditions, you don't restrict or withhold your love because you don't like something your husband's doing. But you can and should, when it feels appropriate to you, set clear boundaries. Say no. You know, when you accept and you love him fully, you still take care of yourself by not tolerating certain treatments. So I really want to be clear here that you don't confuse love or like loving without conditions to mean tolerance and condoning him saying rude things or yelling at you or ranting about something when you asked for a timeout or a ceasefire, right? And it doesn't mean you having to do certain things for him. Loving doesn't mean you have to do anything, take any specific actions. It doesn't mean needing to set aside your own well-being so you can do more for him. No. It's not like if I love him unconditionally, I need to go buy him pastries in the middle of the day, even if I have a full schedule that day. This is something I've thought about. Or that I have to have sex with him on a Wednesday night, even if I feel crappy, just because he wants to, right? That is not love. That's people pleasing. Right? Just doing what he wants when you really don't want to. That's not love. I mean, maybe if you really are feeling love and you feel like you really want to do those things, of course do those things. But don't do it just because he wants you to and you think that that's going to get you approval, right? That's people pleasing. That's not unconditional love. And so when it comes to loving without conditions, boundaries really need to come in, right? They're an important part of loving unconditionally. Boundaries set you up to be able to love without condition, right? They allow you the safety and the protection to be free to love without restriction. So use those boundaries. I might make an episode about this, like this relationship between unconditional love and boundaries. But for right now, just hear what I've just said. And if you want, you can go check out, I made an episode about boundaries, relationship boundary basics. It's called episode 51. Check that out. And I know that there might be some other worries about what it could lead to and fears about what it could lead to if you love without condition, without restriction. And if that's like a concern for you, I absolutely highly recommend you go listen to the episode Love is the Reward, episode 15. And that episode will help allay some fears and misconceptions about what love is. Because really, again, loving without conditions is truly a gift to you, and it's a gift to your marriage, and it feels amazing. And I don't want you to use anything as an excuse to not allow yourself the joy of feeling love. So the question becomes, how do you make loving without conditions a habit? So let's just look at a tiny little bit of brain science, because this is key. So the neurons in your brain are fired in a certain way to get you where you are today. Like they've been firing in certain ways, and exactly where you are today is the result of that. Right? The way that your neurons fire in your brain, it creates your life and your experience of it. In other words, there are thought patterns in your brain that I think of as like, they're neural networks, but they're like little, I always think about them as little roads going on in your brain. And they're created by certain ways of perceiving and thinking, and they're like patterned in there. So it's easier and easier for you to have the old ways of pre-programmed ways of thinking and seeing and experiencing things, which is going to lead to a certain set of emotions being more predominant in your life, because certain neurons fire together, you have a certain kind of thought, and that leads to certain kinds of emotions. And those become kind of like the default in you. So to feel more love, to be more in love, and have a more love-filled life, you need to create a new groove or new neural pathways, a new set of neural pathways, a new little road system in your brain. Now, even just listening to this podcast and kind of opening your brain up and hearing these new ways to think about love is like a beginning of etching in those new pathways. Maybe just the surface of it. I kind of like to think it's like bushwhacking the first path on, like the first pass, not path, on a new path, right? On a new road. Like it's like I talk to my clients about how when they start to learn to think and feel in new ways, they're actually bushwhacking a new trail inside their brain. And eventually the more they go over that trail, the more it becomes like a dirt road, and then it becomes like a paved road, and then it becomes like a super highway, right? It becomes like a super highway. So it's like the quickest, most easeful path road to go down. When you look around you at the world, right? It becomes part of who you are. In other words. So when you do this with love, loving, being full of love becomes who you are. Now, doing this work, it like getting there, like forming any new habit, actually is deliberate. You have to do it on purpose. So that's where we need to start, is understanding and then choosing to deliberately love on purpose, expand your capacity to love. Again, it's so easy for us to focus on what's wrong and, have excuses to withhold love, right? It's so easy for us to feel defended and resentful and closed to love. It's very natural for our default brain, unless we've done a lot of work and unless we start to choose to change that and do the work, right? But we really can open ourselves back up to love. And it starts with questioning the thoughts that are causing the lack of love, right? That are causing the resentment, the closedness to love, the hardening towards love, the defendedness, right? The judgment, all of these things. Actually, it really starts with awareness of when we're doing that and when we're closing ourselves off to love. But then once we see when we are and where we are and the thoughts that are creating that, the thoughts that we're having that are leading to closeness, we can question those thoughts, those perceptions, those ways of like old habits of seeing him and thinking about him. So let me give you an example. My brain has been noticing one of the things my husband's quote unquote doing wrong, which is when he wants something or presents an idea to me and I don't instantly approve of it and I want to talk about it, like I want to reflect on it and share my thoughts about it, he doesn't seem to like listen. He doesn't actually let me express my concern fully before he argues for his side. Okay, now this is my perception. This is not a fact. This is how I experience it, right? And so just the other night, something happened along these lines. He was saying something about how he wanted to take our son to do something. And I had some concerns. And so I started to just share my fears. And he, cut me off and started to argue for why he should be able to do it and why he wanted to do it. And my reaction to that was to quickly, the normal default brain reaction is to see how he's doing it wrong, right? To focus on how he's not listening. And then I felt kind of mad and a little hurt and very closed kind of instantly to loving him, right? So in that moment, when I remember back, for a moment, he felt very unlovable to me, right? And so I sat down and I questioned myself. I questioned my perception that he wasn't lovable because he wasn't listening to me. I asked myself, why am I wrong about that? That he's not lovable, right? I asked myself, how is he lovable? Why am I wrong about love not being possible here? How is it possible for me to love him with this behavior, with him not listening, with him arguing for his side, instead of listening to my perspective? This is what I mean by questioning our perceptions, and particularly questioning the perceptions that make you believe that you can't love him in the moment with whatever he's doing, right? And so I sat down and I answered these questions, and I'll share just a couple of my answers. I'm wrong about him not being lovable because I can see he's so eager to help our son have joy. And that's why he wanted to do it, right? Also, he wanted me on his side knowing that he has lovely intentions. That's why he wasn't listening, right? He wants me to feel like the joy and excitement of the adventures that he wanted to do, right? He wanted me to feel that excitement with him. And, he thinks it's joyful, and he just wanted me to share in that. And he wants to live and enjoy this life and not be held back. Could I love those things? Can I love that in him? Of course. I can feel love, right? And like that big, swelling, open heart feeling right now. Asking myself, why am I wrong about love not being possible here? And how is it possible for me to love him with him not listening? Answering those questions made so much space for me to love him. Yeah? Now, does this mean that I don't ask him to work on listening better? Or to take some moments to really hear what my perspective? Of course not, right? I definitely did. And does this mean that I let him do whatever he wants, even if my, mama alarm bells are going off? No, of course not. It never means I don't speak up and put my foot down around things that are very, very important to me, like my child's life. But now I can do it from a place of openness to him and love for him, which of course is going to bring such better results, right? Meaning, in this case, he's going to be able to hear me because it's not coming out in a tone that's judging and critical, right? From which he might only hear, you're doing something wrong, you're bad, right? That breaks down communication real fast. That won't have him listening to me, I can guarantee it. Whereas coming from love has him listening, which is exactly what I wanted in the first place, right? So for you to begin making a habit of loving without conditions, whenever you find yourself withholding love, and the signal is going to be that you feel resentful or judgmental or annoyed or contempt or condescension, right? Something like that. Whenever you notice yourself feeling that, you can ask yourself these questions, or even just one of them. Why am I wrong about him being unlovable right now? How am I wrong about love not being possible here? How is he lovable right now? How is it possible for me to love him with this going on? Really spend some time with those questions and make it a habit. That's how we begin to make love a habit. Now, of course, there's more ways to build this habit of love, right? Loving without conditions, loving so much, letting yourself feel the gift and have the gift of loving. There's so many ways to build this habit, make it really strong until you have what I call a lasting love brain. And we've talked about different ones, some here on this podcast. And of course, I go into depth on this with my clients. And maybe you have your own kind of ways of guiding yourself towards more love, guiding yourself back to your heart. And I applaud any effort at it, because no effort at love is ever a wasted effort. So go make that effort. Begin to build this habit of loving without conditions. And if you know that this is part of your work, which I think it's part of almost every single person's work in a marriage, but you feel like you know that there's things holding you back, there's barriers to love inside of you. This is, of course, at the very heart of the work that I do with my clients. And one of the areas that I find so often is also at the very heart of like the obstacle to loving without conditions is the capacity to love ourselves, the knowing of ourselves as lovable, right? Self-love is like the garden from which love for others grows. So if you're holding a grudge in yourself against yourself, if you have conditions on your love for yourself, right? If you withhold love for yourself, unless you're, this way, or you achieve that, or you lose 20 pounds or whatever, you're not going to be able to love others as well. My work as a coach is to help you love yourself and love others fully and deeply and without conditions. So your life is as full and as rich with love as is possible for a human being. If you've been wanting to coach with me but holding back for one reason or another, I lovingly nudge you towards reaching out today. The way I'm structuring things may be changing in the future, and my one-on-one spots for coaching with me are actually going to be, there's going to be less of them. So reach out today, schedule your consult. I would be honored to talk with you about what it will mean for you in your marriage to coach one-on-one with me. To do so, head to the link in the show notes to set up the consult, or go to www.lifeisworthloving.com and click the work with me or the get started with a call button right below that. And it'll be pretty straightforward from there. All right, my lovelies, have a wonderful week and be oh so well.